Well, we're delighted to have with us today Ted Meehan. He's the executive director of the Pennsylvania Catholics Network, and he's authored a couple of books, and pretty interesting guy. Former Republican state committeeman from Pennsylvania?
That's correct.
I'm former state chairman. I wonder if you and I bumped into each other. I was state chairman of the Republican Party, 99 to 203.
Good for you.
Yeah, so anyway, nice to see you. Hey, listen, I want to talk about Paul Ryan. I know there's a lot going on with him now being the vice presidential nominee, and how that is faring among Catholics. And he's received some criticism, but yet a lot of praise. How are you viewing it?
Well, I think that sometimes the criticism that is being leveled is not entirely accurate. One of the things that I've heard many times that is being repeated on network news is that Paul Ryan's budget plans had come under fire from the United States Conference of Catholic Bishops, which is not exactly the case. I believe what actually did happen was that two individual bishops had written to several members of Congress, but according to canon law, they do not speak for the entire Conference of Catholic Bishops unless all the bishops specifically authorize them to do so, and that didn't happen in this case.
What was their complaint?
I think that their complaint was that they believed that the plan that Ryan had was to cut benefits to the truly needy. Oh. And I believe that when Ryan was asked to respond to that, he pointed out that his plan actually was a reduction in the rate of growth rather than any cuts. And in fact, he was freezing the growth rate at 3%, whereas the Obama administration had preferred a freeze of 4.5%. Doesn't sound like a lot, but when you're talking in the huge numbers that the national government's budget amounts to, it's a substantial number.
All right. Now, within Catholicism, there are what I think we determined that are settled issues and prudential issues or unsettled issues, and I would assume that would be what's under scrutiny now as to what Paul Ryan actually believes. How do you think all that lines up?
Well, generally speaking, the way the Church has tried to instruct Catholics to form their conscience before their vote, they have certain foundational issues, settled issues, in which Catholics are taught to avoid participation in things that are intrinsically evil. So, as an example, if a candidate embraced abortion, stem cell research, racism, same-sex marriage, those are things that the Church has spoken of as being intrinsically evil. So voting for someone who is promoting these types of issues is a passive or a tacit participation in those evils, and so Catholics are instructed to avoid doing that. If there's either no difference between the two candidates, or these issues don't come into play in the votes, then Catholics are allowed to exercise what we call prudential judgment. These are things where there may be more than one acceptable way to try to solve a problem. As an example, a bishop, an individual bishop, or any other Catholic might believe that the best way to use their vote to help those who are truly needy is to ask the government to give the poor people more money. And that, of course, would come from the taxes on the rest of the people of the United States. In Paul Ryan's case, what he is trying to do is to avoid a debt crisis. So I think that the statistics are that 40 cents of every dollar that the government is currently spending comes from borrowing. And when we borrow, we're actually passing on debt not to ourselves, but to our children and to their children. And so there's a question of the morality, on both ends. Are we helping people, or are we not helping people? And where can we find the greatest good? And there's a prudential judgment that each person is required to go through, so that they do use their vote to advance the most good that in their own conviction.
In the hierarchy of the church, Ted, do they believe that Paul Ryan's nomination is a good one and squares with Catholic teaching and doctrine, and therefore he would be solid on those settled issues?
Well, in fact, Paul Ryan's voting record on those settled issues is very strong. He's got a 100% pro-life voting record. He has been an opponent of same-sex marriage. He has opposed stem cell research. His record is very good, on all of these foundational settled issues. If we were being truly honest about this, we would have to look at who his opponent is, and that'd be Joe Biden, who is also a Catholic, and who is not very strong on any of those issues. In fact, I think he has a 100% voting record when he was a senator in support of the National Abortion Rights Action League. He has come out in favor of same-sex marriage, and he supports the HHS mandate, which assaults the religious freedom of the Catholic Church by mandating them to pay for abortifacient drugs, sterilizations, and contraception.
I want to come back to that, but just to continue on this vein just for a moment, it appears from we evangelicals, we're very pleased with the Paul Ryan nomination because of his stance on these settled issues of the sacredness of human life, traditional marriage, religious freedom, freedom of conscience, a right to private property, and even into the social justice issues. In fact, we view him more solid in that area than we do Romney, and therefore it makes it more palatable for us evangelicals to vote for Romney because of Ryan's solid stance.
Well, I agree with you. I think that it's helpful to Romney to have picked out Ryan, because I think that shows that he is open to what Ryan's positions have been. When Pope John Paul II had written about the Church's ministry to all of human nature, he wrote one encyclical which is often cited, called Centesimus Annus, and it was written 100 years after his predecessor as Pope Leo XIII had written one called Rerum Novarum, which essentially confirmed workers' rights to form unions for collective bargaining, when that was really a very important thing to go on record as supporting. But in Pope John Paul II's encyclical, he used a term called a preferential option for the poor. It was in one paragraph of about a 55-page encyclical, and I believe in reading it that he is talking about each individual, Christian and Catholic, supporting with their own means those who are less fortunate than themselves. If you think back to the Good Samaritan, the story was that the Samaritan found someone who had been beaten and robbed. He helped him, brought him to an inn, emptied his wallet, and said, "Take care of this man, and if he needs any more, I'll pay you on my way back."
Right.
That was an individual instance of virtue, some exercising compassion and generosity. If the Samaritan had been forced or taxed to take care of this victim, we never would have heard of him. Not a story that would have had any meaning to us in terms of defining virtue.
Wow. Let me come back to the Joe Biden thing just for a moment. It's a little bit of a sidebar here, Ted, but how does the Catholic Church reconcile a Joe Biden and a Nancy Pelosi when they've been so contradictive of church doctrine?
I think that, as a general rule, and I can't speak for the bishops, I'm just a layperson myself, but I think as a general rule, the church is reluctant to publicly criticize members of any faith, really, individually, because I believe that the proper way to instruct and to offer counsel to someone on a spiritual level is individually, face to face. And so they really are very reluctant to get involved in a public spat with an elected official unless there's really a very serious problem that drives right
Wasn't there a move to maybe withhold the Eucharist from such Catholics?
That has happened several times, and in fact, the bishops, each bishop has the authority to do that. In fact, each parish priest has the authority to do that, and that has happened a number of times in the past 10 or 15 years, where people who have taken a very public stand in favor, in favor of some of these intrinsically evil positions, they have been asked to avoid presenting themselves for communion.
All right, my last question, and thanks for, again, your time today. We're talking to Ted Meehan, and he is the Executive Director of the Pennsylvania Catholic Network. Ted, I would assume the church is pretty thrilled to have a Catholic on the ticket.
I think they are, and I think that, I think that in this particular situation where there's a Catholic on both tickets, I think it's a chance to help to reconcile what the church's teaching should be. And I think that this provides us with a very stark contrast, and the dialogue that's taking place, I think, now is an important one. But I think it's important that those who understand what what criticism has been leveled at Paul Ryan also are able to point out that this came from two of the bishops out of over 200. So, and in fact, a number of bishops have come out and supported Paul Ryan. So, I think that's an important point that people should be aware of, especially Catholics.